Hey, what's going on? Keith here from Sports Vibes TV. And in this video, I just want to talk about some recent tweets from Marc Berman. And he was talking about some players that either had interest in the Knicks or players the Knicks had interest in. And the first player I want to talk about is Victor Oladipo. Now, Victor Oladipo is a player I myself even tried to acquire when I was doing my realistic rebuilds. I like what he's able to do. He can both be a secondary playmaker, he can shoot, and at that time in this offseason, the Knicks really needed more of that on the roster. And it seems like the Knicks think, the same. And they're still inquiring or they're still monitoring the situation over in Houston because a couple weeks ago or a few days after that trade was finalized, and that would be the 4-team trade that sent James Harden from Houston to Brooklyn. Houston received Victor Oladipo, and there was news that they may not have a long-term future with each other. And if that's going to happen, if that's the case, then it would make sense for Houston to then flip Oladipo for more assets to try to accelerate their rebuild. Me personally, where I saw the Knicks in their stage of development, I wouldn't think going out and acquiring, expiring deals would be, the best for us. But apparently the Knicks think completely different, and they went out and acquired Derrick Rose, who's in that same situation. So now it appears they may be turning their attention to Victor Oladipo to try to bring him in and give us some more offensive firepower. But the issue I have with that now is Victor Oladipo is a pending free agent. If you really like him, just take the time, let the season play out. You already know the Rockets may not extend him. So if he stays there past the trade deadline, then you have an option to go and all it'll cost you is cash and cap space. And if he does get traded, then, there are going to be other options out there that we can bring in. If we were to bring in Victor Oladipo now, when we already have Derrick Rose that we're trying to integrate into the team, then you're going to take minutes from RJ. And I think RJ has shown progression this season. So to make a drastic move like bringing in a Victor Oladipo, who is a player that's not even going to be guaranteed to be with us past this season, just to kind of throw off what we have growing now, I don't think would be the right way to go. And to echo that, with the next player that Marc Berman kind of suggested or said the Knicks were monitoring, and that would be Bradley Beal, I feel the same way, not only because not that it would stunt RJ's growth, it's the fact that RJ would have to be included in any deal, I think, for a Bradley Beal. If I'm the Washington Wizards, I'm not about to trade our star shooting guard, and you're not going to give me your budding shooting guard in return. And on top of that, I'm going to want a truckload of picks. Look at how many picks the Houston Rockets were able to acquire from the Brooklyn Nets for James Harden. Now, James Harden is a much better player, I would agree. But, Bradley Beal is still up there in that conversation when it comes to the elite twos in the game. So you're thinking, or I'm thinking, they're going to at least want 2 to 3 picks on top of some young talent if they're going to let go of a Bradley Beal, because they're going to be staring straight at a rebuild as well, because they're not going to have much outside of Brickbrook, and they could pair RJ with a Denny, Avdija, with a Rui, and some of the other young players on that roster. So that's why I would be against a Bradley Beal deal, not because it would just be a Bradley Beal for RJ swap, but you're also going to have to include those truckloads of picks, which are going to restrict us from what we can do moving forward to build around a Bradley Beal and a Julius Randle combo, because that's probably what they would pair. That's who we would have to pair if we're going to move off of RJ. And to me, that's not something I would be willing to do. That would be too expensive for me, and I feel like we can find better value elsewhere, whether that be through the draft, through free agency, or even other trades. Now, the third player that Marc Berman mentioned is JJ Redick, the sharpshooter from New Orleans. Well, he's not from New Orleans, but he's playing with the New Orleans Pelicans right now. And it kind of makes sense. Well, actually, with Marc Berman's tweet, what he was saying is not that the Knicks are looking at JJ Redick, but that JJ Redick has narrowed down his two preferred destinations to the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks. And that would make sense. When JJ Redick was playing on the Philadelphia 76ers, it was said that he commuted from his Brooklyn apartment to Philly for game days and practices. Kind of crazy, but if he got it like that, he can do it like that. So it would make sense for him to want to come back to the New York metro area so he can be close to his home. I guess he lives a decent amount of time in Brooklyn, or he still has the apartment. So if he comes to Brooklyn, he can stay there, or if he comes to New York, he can stay there, and he can still be with a team that's actually contending. Both the Nets and the Knicks are still at this moment in playoff contention. So that just makes sense that JJ Redick would want to come over here. You have two things that, when you put them together, is just the perfect scenario: proximity to home and also a place to compete. Now, that trade as well, it kind of troubles me because that's another two guard that's going to cut into the time of RJ. And the only way I see it really working is if you see RJ play a lot more at the three. And then that way, if you bring in Oladipo or you bring in JJ and you don't have to ship RJ out, then you can still give RJ a decent amount of minutes to continue with his progression. But those would be my issues with the three players that Marc Berman has mentioned. The fact that you're going to cut into RJ's minutes, in my belief, and I think even though you may see some gains from on-court performance from the team, I think that'll just be in the short term, and long term, you're going to hinder RJ's development. And that's been my problem with the Derrick Rose trade potentially, and with these three players mentioned as well. So let me know what you think down in the comments. All right. Once again, I'm Keith, host of Sports Vibes TV, and I'm out.
Uh-huh.